So I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed presenters. We have Edgar Mian and Basil Paul. Edgar travels coast to coast, training financial institution employees on value-added checking features and implementation strategies. The Kansas State University alum has 24 years in the industry. His favorite part of the job is getting to meet people from different parts of the United States. And Edgar lives in Chicago, so he is a Bears fan, and he's married to Holly, who was born and raised in Wisconsin and is a Green Bay Packer fan. So that's an exciting household on Sundays. They've got a 16-year-old daughter named Ava, who is their pride and joy. And Edgar enjoys family time, recreational sports, Chicago-style hot dogs, oh, I'd like to try that, and coaching boxing at a local gym. Now we have Basil, who's an advocate, advisor, and analyst, whose role is to help secure the safety of our members' credit identities and personal information through the tools and resources provided by our monitoring programs. Basil has over 7 years of experience as a lead investigator and an additional 8 years of experience in banking and the financial sector in supervisory positions. Basil lives in Atlanta with his wife and 2 sons and is a diehard Eagles fan. We've got NFL fans here. Basil enjoys time with his loved ones and singing karaoke with his family and friends. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Edgar. And thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. First of all, apologies up front. Basil's got his background. Christine, when she was on, she had her nice background as well. Mine's just a blank wall. And there's a reason for that. As Christine mentioned in my bio, I'm a trainer. So I go out and I travel the United States, travel the country, and training financial institution employees on providing these different products that I'm going to show you some of them, some features and what to look for. And right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually in San Bernardino, and this is where I've been so far this week. Galveston, Texas, flew out of Houston, little layover in Dallas, Palm Springs, and now San Bernardino. So that's where I'm at. Told you I travel for work, and I love it, and I absolutely love it. Kind of tough, don't get me wrong, being around for the family, but on the weekends, that's my time. So a great quality time, but nice to meet everyone here. So shielding your identity. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question, and I can't see your faces or anything of the sort, but anyone here been a victim of identity theft, identity fraud? And again, I can't see you, but do me a favor. If you have, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, now I need everyone to go ahead and raise your hand, because guess what? You have been a victim of identity theft. Folks, the bad guys, when I say the bad guys, I mean the fraudsters, the identity theft fraudsters, they have your information. It's in their hands. Now, when I do these trainings, again, across the United States, I generally bring that up, and I ask that question up front to employees, like employees of Cal Coast. And some of them nod their head. Yeah, I've been a victim of identity theft. I know the bad guys have my information. Some of them look at me a little bit funny. And some of you may be looking at the screen a little bit funny right now and thinking to yourself, well, what do you mean? What do you mean, Edgar? What do you mean the bad guys already have my information? Well, I'm going to prove it to you. It's called corporate data breaches. Folks, if you've ever been a part of any breach, yes, the bad guys have your information. It's in their hands. They may not be using it, but they got it. It's in their hands. I've been the victim 5 different times that I know of. I think there's more, but I've been advised of. So here's just some of them here that I listed off. There's many, many, many more. But let's talk about the 5 that I've been advised, that I've been part of these breaches. For example, years ago, that Target breach that happened. If you were part of that Target breach that happened years ago, then yeah, the bad guys have your information. Okay. Shortly after that, the Home Depot breach happened. Equifax, if you've ever had anything ever reported to the major credit bureau, Equifax. All right, everybody on this webinar, again, I can't see your faces, but go ahead and nod your heads up and down for yes, you have. Then it happened, folks. It wasn't your fault, but it happened. Let's see, Delta Airlines got breached about 2.5 years ago, and Marriott got breached about a year ago, a little over a year ago. That's 5 times for me. And you could probably name others: Chipotle, Wendy's, Michael's, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Remember that one? that was what, about 80, 90 million big. So folks, they have it. Hey, anybody on this webinar have Facebook? How many times have they been reached? So folks, they have it. Unfortunately, they just do. Now, I know they're not using my information. How do I know that? Because of some of the features that I'm going to talk about here in a moment on what to look for. I have these features. So that's how I know they are not using it at the moment. So anyway, again, folks, they have it, unfortunately. Not trying to scare you or anything, but it's a realism. It's a realism. All right. So here's what the focus of this webinar is going to be on. It's actually going to be on number 2 here. Personal identifiable information, right? And somebody using your information and receiving alerts and so on, and what it is that you should be looking for. But I do want to touch on number 1, okay? And the reason why is when I do these presentations, I generally get asked about, well, Edgar, you're talking about somebody using my social security number, somebody getting a loan in my name, but what about my money? Okay, what about my money in my checking account or in my savings? Can you give me some information? Can you give me some advice on what it is that I need to be looking for? So by all means, myself and Basil, what we deal with number 2 here, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. But I do want to just give you some advice on what I hear out there. And most of the time I hear this from your financial institution. They're going to be the best one here when it comes to number 1, but also in hearing other speakers. So just giving you some advice on what to do as far as those fraudulent transactions, right, on the checking account, or maybe a fraudulent debit card swipe, okay, or a fraudulent credit card swipe. Folks, you all have recourse if that happens, okay? If there's some money missing from your account, you do have some recourse. However, you got to catch it. And by catching it is, you got to check your transactions, folks. You just do. Whether you do it online, whether you log in online and look at your transactions, or if you look at your statements, that's why I have it down 3 times. Check your transactions, check your statements, check your statements, check your statements. That's how you have recourse, because if there's a fraudulent transactions on your checking account, a savings account, whatever, you go to your financial institution and you file a dispute. Okay, there might be a little provisionary time frame where they're going to do a little bit of investigation, but at the end of the day, if it's a fraudulent transaction, you will get it back. Okay, you will get it back, but you got to catch it. You got to catch it. So please check your transactions. So just a quick story, folks, because sometimes I get this when I'm doing these trainings, and then they talk to their members, the consumer out there. Well, you know what? I just don't have time. Folks, make the time. It's your money. You have to make that time. Okay. So check your transactions. And sometimes I get asked the question, well, what about paper statements? What about online and logging in online? Folks, me personally, to each his own, right? Personally, I don't like paper statements. I do the e-statements. And yes, financial institutions, all of them, including Cal Coast, they are secure. They are secure. In fact, financial institutions are the most secure out there. They just are. The scrutiny that they face in having the highest standards of firewalls, etc. They get examined all the time when it comes to this security. So they are secure, folks. So I trust them. That's me personally. Okay, to each his own. Some other things that I've heard out there, and sometimes we get by our IT security team, they make us do these little online tutorials as well, and Basil's does this as well, is to use strong passwords, right? Password is not a strong password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is not a strong password. So have strong passwords. Wi-Fi, okay? Don't use the hotel's Wi-Fi. Don't use the Starbucks Wi-Fi. Those are not secure out there. Also, avoid skimming. Okay, when as I mentioned before, and as Christine mentioned before, I travel for work. So yes, I constantly go to foreign ATMs, and when I do, I always search for a financial institution like Cal Coast. I go to their ATMs. I try to avoid the ATMs that might be just out there, that may be in a gas station. Okay, I just try to avoid those. Those tend to be higher risk for whatever reason. They just do. There's more skimming opportunities there. Now, if it turns out that, you know what, I just need to go to an ATM and it happens to be like, for example, at a gas station. So one of the things that I do is I actually wiggle before I put my card in. And if it's loose, you can pull it out. More than likely, there's something wrong. That's a skimming mechanism on there. I just don't use it and I won't use it. So just be aware, folks, and don't give out any unnecessary information. Just don't do that, whether in person, on the phone, or emails, the phishing emails. I'm starting to get those. I'm starting to see a little bit more right now. For me personally, it actually happens to be the Geek Squad. I don't know why, but it is a phony email is what it is, but it does say the Geek Squad. So years ago, my wife and I, we signed up for the Geek Squad, and we no longer have that, but through Best Buy anyway. But now all of a sudden I'm getting these emails, and it is fraud, because if I put my cursor over the where it says Best Buy Geek Squad, it's not Best Buy and Geek Squad. Okay, it's a bunch of different numbers and characters and etc. And it says at gmail.com, and it's just not them. So, avoid those is the best advice that I can give you when it comes to, someone stealing the information. So check your transactions, folks. That's my best advice for you, because you do have a recourse when it comes to that. So I just wanted to lightly touch on that. Stealing your money, right, out of your checking account, fraudulent debit card swipe, fraudulent credit card swipe. Now, what I want to focus on here is safeguarding your personal identifiable information. Okay, somebody using it for personal gain. Okay, and how do I go about doing that? So, you know what? Any advice? What to look for? These things right here. This is what I look for right here. If there's different companies out there, okay, and I'll give you some advice on that here in a moment, on what to look for, which companies to look for, etc. But these are the bare minimum of what I am looking for right here, these features. All right. So at the top, we're going to just start with credit monitoring. Let me ask you all folks a question, and you don't have to answer it. But if somebody was to run your credit right now, how would you know? How would you know if somebody was to run your credit right now? If you don't have any type of monitoring, you might not know. Now, if it's you that's applying for a loan, then yes, right? There's that expectation. Yeah, they're going to run my credit. They're going to let you know, right, that they're running your credit. So you even have to sign off on that they're running your credit. So you know that it's you. But what about if it's not you? If you don't have any type of credit file monitoring service, then how would you know? The answer is you wouldn't, right? You wouldn't know. And now you have all kinds of fraudulent loans showing up in your credit bureau reports, and you find out when it's too late, right? When they've ruined your credit. So definitely one of the things that I look for is credit file monitoring. I'm just going to give you a personal story, and real story happened to me last year. Okay. So last year, about June, late May, June timeframe, my wife and I, we are starting the in-game process. And what I mean by that is eventually retiring. As Christine mentioned in my bio, I live in Chicago, and we have settled on Southwest Missouri, Table Rock Lake. Okay. I know the lake well. I used to live in Kansas City many years ago, and I would frequent Table Rock Lake. And last year in early June, my wife and I decided to buy a lot, is what we did. So that's going to be our end game. Eventually, we will build there on the lake, get a boat, etc., etc. Okay, so we did that, and we financed it. And then what happened? And this was again June when we financed it, closed, and everything is July timeframe. Then what happened in early September is, because I have credit file monitoring, alert, alert, alert. 3 alerts. Something's going on. Now, for the most part, if you notice a copy of this alert right here, okay, the alerts are generic in form, meaning it doesn't give you the details of what exactly happened, but it lets you know, hey, something has happened, and here's what we need you to do, member, or Edgar in this case, is log in. And then after I log in, to the platform. And again, CalCoast provides this as well in one of their checking accounts. Actually, both checking accounts, this one particular extra value checking that they offer. You log in and it gives you the details of what exactly happened. And there was a credit check, and it was Bank of America credit card companies inquiry. It ran my credit. Then there was another one, Chase, JP Morgan Chase credit card services, another inquiry. And then there was a third one, Capital One credit card. So what had happened is the financing company, they had gone through a breach. Information was out there. And remember, they already have it, right? So a fraudster was trying to get 3 different credit cards from Bank of America, Chase, and Capital One. But because I have this service here, I was able to stop it. So what had happened is as soon as I logged in, right, to see what exactly is going on, credit card companies. So what I then did is I called into Basil. And by the way, Basil's going to be talking to you a little bit later. I call him fraud experts. That's what I call him. Okay, because regular person like myself, we can relate to that, right? An advocate, somebody that's going to help you. Now, because I'm in the industry, I kind of know what the next steps were, but nevertheless, I called Basil and I said, hey, Basil, this is what's happening. Here's what I'm going to do. Okay. And I have those 800 numbers from these financial institutions because it's in my login. It's in the details of the alert. But Basil was kind enough. And remember, Basil, he's going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later. And he's an advocate. He's a fraud expert. He said, Edgar, I have direct lines to them. And do you want me to be on this line with you? Because I will do that for you. And again, because I'm somewhat in the industry, I said, no, Basil, I think I'm okay right now. But if I run into any issues, let me give you a call back and maybe I'll get you on a 3-way call with Bank of America or Chase or Capital One. So I called them up, okay, and I was able to stop it. It was fraud and it was caught. But can you imagine if I didn't have such a program like this? Well, then folks, guess what? The bad guys, they're now using my information, and there's 3 credit card companies, different credit cards out there that they're now using it, fraudulent loans. So it didn't happen because I have credit file monitoring. So stressing that a little bit, okay? And again, CalCoast, give them a little plug here. They have 2 different accounts that they offer that has this credit file monitoring. So that's one that you definitely want out there. Here's a different feature that I also have, okay? Dark web monitoring. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about the dark web and what it is. The dark web, and I'm giving you just a 30,000 foot view is what it is of what I'm giving you here without going into a lot of detail because we would probably need an IT person to give you really the details of this. But the dark web it's a special internet. That's what it is. Special internet. In fact, it takes a special internet browser to even get there. So you have to go out there and get a special internet browser. For example, Safari won't get you there. Chrome won't get you there. It's a special internet browser. And fraudsters, they like the dark web. And here's the reason why. On the dark web, it's hard for an individual to be tracked, or I should say harder for an individual to be tracked. And if that's the case, well, guess what? The bad guys, the fraudsters, they like the dark web because if it's hard for them to be tracked, then they will take your information and that's where they like to sell it. So what I have is dark web monitoring. And if any of my PII, personal identifiable information, name, social security number, and I can pick and choose, by the way, what needs to be monitored out there, passport information, etc., emails, okay? If I want that to be scanned, and if all of a sudden it's out there moving out there on the dark web, I receive an alert, right? I receive an alert. Now, what to do after that? Receive an alert, what needs to be done? That's where I contact my advocate, right? Like, for example, Basil, and he helps me out with that situation. So again, that's a different feature that I definitely look for, and that's dark web monitoring. And that's where the bad guys, that's where they like to use, sell, and your information. So if it's moving out there, I'm going to be told of such. Look for a product, a service, a feature, a checking account that gives you a score, gives you a credit bureau report as well. Okay, because that can be a telltale sign that something is happening. If your score is changing drastically, something's going on, right? Something is going on. So that could be a telltale sign that, hey, you know what? Something might be going on, might not be you. And if it's not you, then it's fraud, right? So look for a product that gives you a score, and also a credit bureau report as well. What else being listed out there, right? Are they your loans? Is it your information? Hopefully it is, right? Because if it's not, then if you're viewing your report, then it's going to be caught, right? It's going to be caught. So some other features that I definitely look for when I'm out there shopping around for a product. I'll recap all this here in a moment, all right? All right. Now, here's definitely one. This is a huge peace of mind here, is being able to have, yeah, it says privacy advocate. I call them experts because that's what they are. That's what they are. Folks, if I wasn't in this industry, would I really know what to do if I'm a victim of identity fraud? Okay. The answer is no. The answer is no. It's kind of a guessing game, right? I don't know what it is. Do I Google it? Do I download a self-help kit? Really don't know what to do. So it's a huge peace of mind that, you know what, if I am ever a victim of identity fraud, I have my very own expert that's going to handhold me from start to finish. And that's where Basil actually comes into play here. He's one of my colleagues. He's a fraud expert. I'm going to let him talk for a moment on the slide right here, and talk about some experiences that he can share with you and what he looks for when somebody was to call in and they're panicking and they're freaking out, because I would definitely panic, freak out, right? When it happened to me, I was like, you know what? Although I kind of have an idea of what to do, I still want to call Basil, and I want to make sure that I'm doing the right steps here. So Basil, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. As Edgar was speaking, we do have 6 pretty basic steps that we follow. Number 1 is obviously when the fraud is detected. So that would be when someone notices it on their online banking statements, or if they're reviewing their credit reports on our site and find any unauthorized or any activity that's attributed to fraud. Of course, the next thing that they want to do is get in touch with a dedicated case manager. That would be someone in our position, someone that's willing to listen to them, to speak to them about their situation, to assess the situation at hand, and provide an action plan for them to resolve whatever the identity theft situation is. And of course, we would create an incident report where we are documenting the activity, any kind of paperwork that they've received, any kind of communication, anyone who they've spoken to. We can document all of that and put it into a report to be available to them at any time that they want to go back and revisit the case or attempt to try to create a file for themselves. And of course, the most important thing is the recovery plan. That's where we go from the implementation of all of the steps and measures that we have in place, and then enact those to make sure that we are fully managing that recovering process and assisting the member in getting to the solution that they're looking for. So that includes step 5, which is establishing fraud alerts, activating the credit monitoring, the dark web monitoring, all of those resources that Edgar were speaking about just a moment ago. We're going to make sure that those things are activated and the member is taking full advantage and use of those products. And of course, number 6, identity restored. So for most victims of identity theft, they're concerned about what is the end result? How are we going to get this removed from my credit report? How do I ensure that this nightmare is over? And so through talking with them about their identity theft events, providing them solutions, putting those solutions into action, will eventually get to that all-important last step of having their identity restored, and also ensuring that this doesn't happen in the future.
All right, perfect, Basil. Thank you so much for that. Again, it's just nice. It's a huge peace of mind knowing that, hey, if it ever happens to you, and it can, right? You got your very own expert that's going to handhold you from start to finish, 1 through 6, until it's finished, until your identity is restored, recovered. So huge feature right here. Definitely look for that. Let's talk a little bit about expense reimbursement. So remember what I said at the beginning, as far as someone dipping into your checking account, a fraudulent debit card swipe, right? And you do have some recourse. You got to catch it, right? Check your transactions, and you will get that back from your financial institution. But on occasion, there's additional expenses that a person may incur dealing with fraud. And if that is the case, you definitely want to look for a product that has expense reimbursement, fraud insurance, above and beyond those transactions. We're talking about, again, above and beyond, somebody dipping into your checking account, a fraudulent debit card swipe or a credit card swipe. Like, for example, let's say everybody on this webinar, okay, do me a favor, enlighten me a little bit. Pretend that you all are victims of identity fraud. Okay, right now we're victims of identity fraud. It's a mess for us. Okay, we're getting nasty collection calls every day. They don't believe that it's not us. So much so that they're taking us to court. They're suing us. This merchant that was defrauded by someone posing as us, okay, they believe that we owe them this money. So now we got to go to court and prove that it's not us. They're taking us to court, and you got a summon that you have to appear in court. And if you got a summoning that you have to appear in court, you legally have to appear in court. And by the way, this fraud is happening out of state. Well, you got to get there, right? Airfare, hotel, meals, rent-a-car, gasoline, lost wages, court costs, lawyer fees, notarized fraud documents, and whatever else. That's what this is for. That's what we're talking about right here. Okay. You'll be out of pocket initially, but get reimbursed. That's the way that this program works. And it says $25,000, and that is annually, by the way, per eligible person. That is what is provided in the 2 checking accounts that CalCoast does offer. So if you're shopping around for features, definitely look for this, because if you don't have this feature in any of those products, identity theft protection product that you may have, then folks, nobody's going to reimburse you for those out-of-pocket expenses, unfortunately. But if you do have this feature, okay, get reimbursed, because you might be out of pocket initially. So that's definitely a feature that I look for as well. So that's the bare minimum. Okay, the bare minimum. These features right here that I just talked about. And if I went through this, fairly fast, again, this is being recorded. It's going to be out there that they're putting out there for you all to continue, ongoing and view. So going above and beyond, some additional features that can help protect you. In these 3 features right here, I'm just going to highlight quickly. This is part of one of the accounts that's being offered at CalCoast. Okay, so again, I would definitely go talk to CalCoast and talk to the different checking accounts that they offer. So this is in their ultra performance account. So what we just talked about, and then on top of that, little IP address monitoring. Basically, it's like a firewall is what it is. IP address is when you log into the internet on laptop, like I am here. Okay, there's a specific code, if you will, IP address that's out there, and if somebody's tapping into that, there's a little bit of funny business, right, going on, then you receive an alert, right? You receive an alert to maybe change your password or to log off, log back in, etc. There's another feature out there, high-risk transaction monitoring. And what that is, there's certain providers out there that are in this network, and something just seems out of whack. And what I mean by that is just a big transaction that's kind of odd for what you've been doing in the past, then you would receive an alert. Also, there's social media monitoring. This is going to be your Facebook, this is going to be your Instagram, your Twitter accounts, etc. Okay, it's being monitored, and if something is just odd, something is not right, maybe vulgarity that doesn't, you haven't used these types of posts before in the past, you receive an alert that maybe you've been hacked, right? Maybe you now have to create a new profile, or log out and create a new password, or maybe cloning as well. That seems to be something that's out there. So just some additional features to go out there and shop around And again, these three features are part of that ultra performance account that CalCoast offers. So, all right. Oh, went a little too far. Before we end here is before we get to some Q&A, where can I get a program? So folks, shop around. Yeah, that's what I tell everyone. Shop around. Look at different companies, right? LifeLock, for example. Okay, ID Shield is a different company that you can go out there and shop around for. Go out there and do a cost analysis, because they're going to be different in cost. Also, what they provide. Just backing up, here's the minimum, right, that I'm looking for right here. Okay, and do a little bit of a cost analysis on that. Sometimes I get this when I'm doing these speaking engagements. What about the free programs, Edgar? What about the free Credit Karma? Well, you got to ask yourself, why are they free? Okay, why are they free? Folks, free Credit Karma. Okay, and not knocking free Credit Karma. Okay, if you have free Credit Karma, hey, you know what? You've started the process. That is a good thing. One thing about free Credit Karma, folks, is Credit Karma is the organization is not a nonprofit organization. Okay, how they make their money is they actually take your information and they sell your information. So the thing that you're trying to protect the most, they're actually selling that out there. So that's something to be aware of and ask yourself, why are they free, right? And what all do you get, right? Is it apples to apples on what's being provided to you? Shop your financial institutions. That's my best advice. That's why I underlined it here. I mean, think about this. If I trust CalCoast Credit Union, for example, I'm using them as an example. If I trust them with my money, then I trust them with my identity. So different features that they offer, different accounts. My best advice to you is to go to possibly the new accounts area or call in to CalCoast and ask them about their identity theft protection products that they offer in their accounts. So that would be my best advice to you. And that's why I have underlined that. Folks, and that is what I have for you here. Now, what I would like to do is, I guess, open it up to some Q&A. Christine, if you want to log back in here.
Yes, all right. I put a note in the chat to ask anyone who has questions to go ahead and use the Q&A. Believe it or not, you were so thorough. We don't have any questions yet, but we will give it, 30 seconds in case people are typing right now. But was there any other, so if someone, this is a lot of information. So Edgar, if there's someone who just is like, where do I start? What's the most important thing I should do today if I want to get started? What would you say that would be?
I would say contact your financial institution. Ask them if they have any features, identity theft protection features that they offer, possibly in a checking account. That's where I would go. And I would, right here, that's the minimum that you want to be looking for right here.
Great. We did have actually a question come through. So this question is, my identity has been stolen. How do I get creditors to leave me alone?
Yeah. So Basil, do you want to help me out with this one?
Sure.
Fraud advocate here.
Yeah, sure. So the most important thing is to get in contact with an expert. That expert is going to become your liaison between yourself and that creditor. And so what our role and our goal is to be the mediator and to explain to the creditor that your information was legitimately stolen and it was used against your will and your consent. And so there is a process that we go through in order to prove we are dealing with the legitimate person, and whoever the creditor assumes is the legitimate person is not, in fact. So that would include remediation process, the resolution process where we would submit documentation or any kind of evidence that they're requiring from us. And so we work with the member to obtain that. And eventually, once the creditor has satisfied those requirements, that should stop them from attempting to collect or harass anyone that is not the legitimate person.
Hey, Basil, can I add to that? Would that be probably what, an affidavit, for example?
An affidavit, yes.
That they would maybe, like, for example, Bank of America, right? That credit check, credit card. They had me sign an affidavit that it wasn't me that was applying for that credit card. So that
Right.
would stop the ongoing phone call, or this should stop the ongoing phone call. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Affidavits through the Federal Trade Commission, through the creditor themselves, like Bank of America, police reports. We assist in coordinating that process as well and making sure that that information gets over to the creditor also. Yeah.
So just a follow up, this guest said that they have sent an affidavit and they're still getting calls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would do in that situation is find out exactly what department or who got that affidavit. Once it's in the hands of the fraud department, that should essentially be a cease and desist for them to continuously contact the member, because at that point, once the documents have been sent over, that should suspend it and put it into an investigation mode. Now, that investigation typically has a time frame of that includes when they receive the documentation, they process it, and then it gets reported as fraud to the Bureau. So my advice would be to find out with the institution that he sent that affidavit to where they are in that process, if they've processed it, if there's any supporting documents that are required that maybe they need in addition to what it is that he has already provided, that's going to help stop or suspend or complete the investigation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we have questions rolling in. So my identity was compromised and used to file my taxes. Can having these services with my account help with my interactions with the IRS?
Well, go ahead, Basil. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so with the IRS and the taxes being infiltrated and that kind of identity theft, obviously the most important thing is your personal information has been compromised, your social security number and your date of birth. And so what our program does is it puts a protective barrier around that information and helps prevent unauthorized persons from using it. Now, what you'll typically get from the IRS tax agents is they will recommend having some kind of protection put into place with the bureaus or with your financial institutions to help prevent this from escalating anything further. And so there are times where our department will get in contact, obviously with the permission of the victim, so we can speak with the IRS tax agent and provide them any kind of information. We, of course, get that cleared through the member themselves first, as to the extent of what they want us to share. Or we'll have a conference call where we'll help facilitate that conversation and work with the agent and say, hey, if there's something that we can provide to you, as long as it's okay with our member, we can certainly email that, scan that over to you guys to help expedite the process and reach a conclusion and help get this resolved.
All right, thank you, Basil. All right, so we've got a very specific question here. What can I do if I have had fraudulent transactions in a different state and the bank concludes in their investigation, but are holding me responsible for those transactions? How can I get my money back?
Yeah, in that case, remember, folks, was it because of the time? We didn't catch it in time. Is that what it was? Remember, what we do, our companies, is we deal really with number two here. Number two. At this point, yeah, I would like to know, at this point, I don't know if it's hire an attorney at that at this point, just because there's some reason that they're not giving you the money back. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a better advice on that. Again, what we do, Basil and I, is we really deal with number two here, right, which is your identity. So
we just have a looks like just a comment here. Most creditors just want their money. If they have you and not the other person, they will lean on you. Sounds like that one's just a comment.
Yeah, no, that's correct, and that's why it's important to get that affidavit, right? The affidavits and sent to them and said, hey, this wasn't me, right? This wasn't me. An affidavit, folks, is a legal document, right? And you are legally stating this is not me. So you're fighting that.
So we've got two more questions, which I think will be perfect since we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. Is there a way to pre-secure my identity that is not necessarily the ID monitoring company?
So I get this question asked, and generally the direction that it goes is, should I freeze my credit bureaus? Okay, that then I mean that is an option for you, I guess, to call the credit bureaus and put a freeze on your credit bureaus. That way, nobody can run your credit. So that's the thing. Go back to the to each his own. That's going to be up to you, because if you ever do need credit and are applying for credit and you have your credit bureaus frozen, well, nobody can get in, right? They can't run your credit. So then there's going to be some time process there on calling them up and unfreezing, etc. So, but I guess my best advice there, if without having a specific product like this, would be, yeah, that would be about the only thing. That'd be about the only thing, because I mean, you could not give out your information, period, but at the end of the day, they already have it. They already have it through these medical breaches and everything else. So, yeah, that would be, I guess, my best advice is put freezes on your credit bureaus. I personally don't, because I have these features right here.
Okay, so this question is a good one. I already have ID theft protection from Calcos. Can I connect Basil with my ID theft issue? So maybe they want to connect with you, Basil.
Sure, absolutely. We work with competitors. We work with our valued members at the credit union. Certainly, if there's something that we can go over, if I can provide an additional solution, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
And Basil, if you'd like, if you'd like to put maybe your email in the chat, that might be helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
For this person who is inquiring. And I think just Edgar, just the last one to just wrap it up. I think this may be the same person who was asking that question. Originally, it's he or she says, no, I reported that same day I received the unauthorized transaction notification. They said my debit card was used along with my PIN, but I have my debit card. So there's something, you're right, there's must be something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it was caught in time, PIN, Basil, do you want to add anything? I mean,
what I was going to say, from a strictly analysis standpoint, if the financial institution can ask why it is that they made that determination, if it's a creditor that you've worked with in the past, perhaps they had a breach, and during that time is whenever your debit card was used on that website or in that creditor, and perhaps that's something that they're not aware of. There has to be some kind of legitimate reason that they should provide you as to why they assume that that was you using your information there. And of course, any kind of evidence that you can provide to them, including if you filed a police report or an affidavit, as Edgar said, would help kind of reinforce the fact that you weren't the one that did that activity. And again, this is going through without seeing any of the specifics or analyzing the case in its entirety.
Thank you so much.